All right. Anyone have any questions? Feel free to just ask here in person or online. You could use the chat box or speak up. I'll try to make sure my noise is up on the computer just in case someone's trying to talk to me. And with that being said, we'll just get started. So this will be kind of an introduction to onions and garlic. Even if you know something, I'm hoping that you'll learn something in this presentation. While they're known worldwide for their robust flavors and health benefits, onion and garlic are actually known in the garden as some of the easiest plants to grow. So I'm really excited to inspire you to get started and get some bulbs dirty. So obviously we do a lot of cooking with our onions and garlic, but maybe not everyone knows about the nutritional benefits and the health benefits. So they have an incredibly rich taste profile that can help enhance the flavors of other things, as well as bring their own spiciness, sweetness, and pungency to their own dishes. They're packed with vitamins, mineral, and organic sulfur compounds that are responsible for the spiciness, are actually responsible for a lot of their health benefits as well. They possess anti-inflammatory properties, great for cholesterol levels. If you're interested in learning more about those organosulfur compounds and get a little nerdy about how onions and garlic can help you, this Oregon State little article below is really great and available for the public. You can just go to the OSU website and search in their search bar garlic and organosulfur compounds, and it'll bring it right up. A lot of super specific and nerdy information, but a lot of really good stuff to know too. I just wanted to throw in there for the nerds. Just blow right over that one. So same thing. So I really like onions and garlic in the garden because it's kind of a set and forget type plant mostly. So gotta throw a little mostly on there. For the large part of their lifespan, they're a set and forget type of plant. They can be planted and fertilized in the fall, left alone until the springtime when feeding may resume. That is, if you get plenty of water, you don't have to think about watering for the most part, which around here we don't have to. The rain just takes over for the whole winter. Maybe we have to do some supplemental watering if we go a dry spell, but not often. Or if you do in pots. I do a lot of container planting myself. So the first little blurb we're going to go over is choosing our varieties. Understanding the importance of your seed stock can help enhance disease resistance, growth, and yield. Learning more about the varieties will just elevate your satisfaction while eating and, having to deal with storing it. Why store something around and eat it if you don't like it? So you find yourself picking out your seed garlic. Here's some things to keep in mind. This is one of the areas that size does matter. The bigger the little clove, the bigger bulb you're going to have in the end. You want to look for health, any discoloration, any squishiness. You're going to look at the tastes. If you're interested, you can squish up a little clove, give it a taste, and decide if you want to plant more of that one or more of this one over here. Storage life is a big decision on picking your garlic. Do you want it to store for 9 months, or would you rather it be spicier and just have it and eat it now, or mince it up and use it in a canning or whatnot?
It loses its spice over storage time.
It not necessarily loses their spice, but I think it's the storage ones tend to be a little less spicy than the other ones. Oh, and then organic. So oftentimes it's hard to find these things in organic stock because they're just hard to go through that process and hard to keep. However, this year Chenard's seed stock is all organic for garlic. So we found a really great grower this year and purchased from them. They're all local and all organic. So really great garlic seed stock this year. So what to know about garlic? You've got your hard necks and your soft necks. The soft necks have a short storage life. Oh, sorry, I got that backwards. I read it wrong. The hard necks have a short storage life and they tend to be the spicier ones. The soft necks have a longer storage life and they tend to be a little sweeter. The hard necks, they still will store like 3 to 4 months. That's a pretty good shelf life for a vegetable. You can find them to be a little easier to peel, fewer cloves, and again, that spicy flavor. The soft necks, they have longer storage lives, 6 to 8 months. You can even push 9 or more, depending on how you're storing them. Lots of different varieties in the soft neck because it's one of the more popular ones. Great clove yielding and great for braiding for that storage. I like to throw in there elephant garlic because it's actually a leek, even though we call it a garlic. It looks kind of like a garlic. Incredibly huge cloves, incredibly huge leaves. When I used to grow them out in the bed out here when we had them, people would think it was a corn stalk, but it's like elephant garlic. The leaves are even edible on them. And this picture down in the right-hand corner is me with it's a fuzzy picture, so sorry about that. But the video is on YouTube from when I pulled it. And the head of that thing is just massive, bigger than my hand.
It's spread like crazy.
Yeah, they do.
The elephant garlic.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have some under our cherry tree, big old cherry tree, and we dig them up and they just keep coming back. They're amazing, amazing.
Let me just double check. I don't have anything in the chat here. Okay, we're good to go. So onion types, they're generally broken down into yellow, red, and white, as well as short, long, bunching, and intermediate. Around here, you're most likely to find the long day bulbs with 4 to 15 hours of daylight. Yellow onions, known for their versatility and robustness, just that great flavor. The red ones for their sweet, vibrant color, and the white ones are most commonly used in salads and stuff because they're a little milder, easier to take on the tongue raw. Well, I'll be talking a little bit more about the different varieties here. So for onions, you'll find here currently at Chenard's, and this is an active picture in the top right-hand corner of our seed stock area. The Stutter Garter, mild, slightly pungent flavor, great storage onion, great for grilling and cooking. And the Yellow Rock, again, a mild, sweet flavor. It's going to be a little bit bigger in size. It's an heirloom variety and will store a little bit better than the Stutter Garter. The little next section down is what was that's the hard necks, the early Italian. Let me double check that. Yeah, sorry. Short-term memory. Music is the hard neck. Okay, and the early Italian's the soft neck. Thank you. You were right. Early Italian, soft neck, sweet, mild flavor, great vigor, long storage life, great for your soups and entrees. The Sicilian, very cold hardy, incredibly high yielding, and a very long storage shelf life. The Inchellium has that heat flavor in it, which is really nice for stores well. And I would say this is one of the ones I see flying out of the garden center, one of the quicker rates. It's a customer favorite. Another customer favorite is the Music, I find. It's very hot but sweet flavor. Excellent cooking and early to maturity. It's one of the first ones you'll see start telling you that it's ready to go. The Dogamsky is one of the newer ones for me this year. Been told it's an amazing flavor. The bulbs are really gorgeous. They're kind of a nice, beautiful red color to them. And their flowerscapes are said to be more delicious. So you can cut the flowers that pop up as they're growing and eat them and leave the rest of the garlic in. So it's kind of like a 2 harvest deal. The Killarney, Strong, nutty, rich flavor, supposed to be easier to peel with its juicy cloves. And however, the important little asterisk on there I thought was super cool is it's more resistant to wet conditions. Here in the Willamette Valley, our winter is just straight wet. So if you got a really wet zone that you're worried about and your mending's not doing as much as you want it to, you could maybe go with that one. Elephant, similar to the soft necks, mild garlic flavor, shorter shelf life, just a real fun conversation starter mostly. Really good to eat. So to be successful in growing the garlics, you really have to be understanding of how they grow and what you have to do when to be real successful. The key components include proper soil preparation, adequate sunlight and water, effective fertilization. I like the word there, effective, because it's not necessarily consistent because over the winter they're not doing much growing. They really appreciate appropriate spacing and depth for that optimal growth as well. Sunlight and water needs, they really are going to want 6 to 8 hours of sunlight, full sun. Understand your soil types, native soil versus raised beds versus containers. Our native soils here in the Willamette Valley are packed with clay, which means they hold on to water and they are stingy with their nutrients. If the nutrients are there, it's just not able to be taken up by the plants because they just hold on to it so tight. To help water availability, drainage, and nutrient availability, you can amend with organic fertilizer or organic composts, put some organic material into the soil. And as that decomposes and breaks down, it breaks up those tight bonds that the clay soil is holding on to and makes it easier for plants to uptake the water and the nutrients from our clay soils. Everyone talks bad on our native clay soils here, but they have the nutrients and they have the ability to provide what our plants need. It's really great stuff. It just needs to be able to be captured by the plants, which is the hard part. Raised beds, they tend to be lacking in nutrients in general. They drain a little better or much better than native soils. And you just add to them. You can amend whatever you like, whatever you need is easier to amend in a raised bed than our native clay soils. Containers, however, are very closed system, closed bottoms, closed sides. The plants get only what you give them when they're living in a container. So they can't scavenge for water and nutrients by reaching out or reaching down through the soil. Plus potting soils drain so much better than anything. So you tend to water a lot more in a container. Watering availability, our biggest threat is bulb rot here in the Willamette Valley. However, underwatering can impair the growth too. So it's a nice fine line there we have to balance, especially in our winter time when the rain just kicks on and basically never stops. However, sometime in January, we'll see like a false spring or something, and it'll be dry and sunny. Those are the days you might think about busting out your hose and maybe giving them a little water. The thing to know about them too is they are very heavy feeders. So they are incredibly hungry plants. They don't have big root systems, so they can't scavenge very far away. So they're very just using up the soil where they can reach it, very hungry. You can help problems that this might cause in the garden by introducing crop rotation, maybe avoiding alliums in that spot, especially if you're seeing disease issues there. Yes.
What do you mean by avoiding alliums with crop rotation? Aren't onions and garlic alliums?
They are. So crop rotation,
Hmm.
you basically want to not plant anything of that same family in that same spot for like 3 years. So if you're planting alliums in that spot, maybe next year you plant your lettuces in that spot and let it rest. Or you can plant like radishes in there. The daikon radishes have really big, deep tap roots. Something to use some other, going into crop rotation a little bit more now. It's all about families. So different families have different root structures and use different types of nutrients out of the soil. So when you switch up the families, the alliums to the nightshades, to the astracaceae, to the cucurbits, which is your, their cucumbers, can help avoid sharing diseases with the family, like if left in that soil, and can help use different parts of the soil. So the alliums, they eat basically in that little 3 to 6 inch radius around the bulb, whereas something with a deeper taproot, like a Brussels sprout, can have access to more of those nutrients that you may have provided in your raised bed before, but isn't quite usable to the bulbs. Crop rotation, I like to encourage everybody to think about. It's not an exact science, but it's something to just think about, and it helps prevent diseases, and it helps create a great soil environment. It's all about the health of the soil and whatnot. I also like to point out, when I get talking too much about soil, that we had James Cassidy in here doing a soil class. He's the soil science teacher from OSU. He gave a soil talk here, and we have that on our YouTube page as well. It's really phenomenal class. The audio got a little funked up on it, but if you do the CC so that it's got closed captioning on it, you can read what he's saying a little bit better than you might be able to hear it, but phenomenal. So let's get a little bit more into the soil basics. So onions and garlic, they like well draining soil. To help increase the drainage in your garden, you can consider mounding, creating mounds to plant in. This will allow the water to kind of run off into the troughs and just escape, rather than creating wet feet zones in that 3 to 6 inch mark of your bulb. They really like reasonable pH, around 6 to 7. That's real right down the center. You can amend your soils if the pH is off. Lime will increase it, sulfur will lower it. Sulfur also increases the nutrient uptake, better flavor, and better yield for onions and garlic because of those organosulfur chemicals within the bulb that are good for us, that create that spiciness, comes from sulfur. So you like that nice bitter taste, add some sulfur to your ground. They are incredibly hungry, so they have high nitrogen demands. You can increase nitrogen in your soil through these soil amendments, including compost mulch into your garden, and fertilizing, granular and liquid. I'll talk a little bit more about the differences between the two later. So adding compost or aged manure can help your soil structure. So we're talking about that soil environment, soil structure, the soil fertility, and the moisture retention, contributing to healthy root development. You can also promote these things through using things like cover crops or crop rotation. Ever want to talk more about these things? I love getting nerdy about crop rotation and cover crops. So I'm here at the Garden Center 5 days or 4 days a week now. So soil preparation, getting ready to put your bulbs in. So you're going to want to kind of dig up the area around your bulbs around 6 inches, just to kind of help increase that drainage for them. That depth is generally much larger than the bulbs need. Again, they're more in that 3 to 6 range, but it helps break up the compaction, increase the drainage, and helps nutrient availability. Let me take some more drink. So to increase the nitrogen in your soil, you can add different amendments, vegetable fertilizers. Bone meal is a very popular one for bulbs. If you use an organic granular fertilizer, like the GB organic stuff we sell here, you don't really have to worry about burning your plants as much as you might with other things. And we like to say, put that stuff right into the hole, touching the bulb. They they can't scavenge very far, so they just need that granular fertilizer as close as possible and easy accessible as possible. Consider using a compost mulch. You want to mulch around 2 inches. Some people like to use straw in the garden. I'm a fan of using just compost mulch because it just adds that organic material in there. Just want more and more organic material in the garden. Consider using the mounds again to prevent that oversaturation. It's very convenient in the garden here in the Pacific Northwest. Bulb planting 101. Do not allow it to rot or soften or sprout before you can get it in the ground. Just get it planted as soon as possible. Each clove of garlic is going to be its own plant. So you can get a lot of plants with one bulb. Goes a long ways. I made this little picture here to point out the roots and shoots because they want to be planted with the shoot zone facing up and the root zone facing down. When in doubt, just plant it sideways. It'll figure it out on its own. Bulbs are very hungry. Consistent feeding through the active growing seasons is necessary for ideal growth. And the keynote there is active growing seasons. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But generally, it just means as our temperatures go further and further below 55 degrees, the active growing of these plants just kind of ceases. It slows down significantly. That is until the weather turns around. We get beautiful 78-degree days randomly. But not only are they affected by air temperature, but soil temperature as well. The further we move into the winter, the colder the ground is going to be consistently. Garlic bulb planting, you're going to want to dig your holes 2 to 3 inches deep, leave them about 4 to 6 inches apart. Organic granular fertilizer directly into that hole. Touch them bulb. If you're going for elephant garlic, they need more space. Cover your soil, ensure about a 2-inch of compost mulch over the top. Rain if needed. They like to be rained or watered in at planting, just to kind of trigger them to get going. And then you're gonna have to supplement water on these 78-degree sunny days, but eventually the rain will kick in. You won't have to think too much about it. Fertilize your bulb after planting with an organic liquid fertilizer and repeat liquid application after a month. So I'll go a little bit into the difference between the two. The granular is a slow release fertilizer that will kind of slowly release into the soil in over the next 3 months. The liquid fertilizer is something you kind of pour directly onto the plant. That is a quick uptake immediately available to that plant. It doesn't stick around in the soil that much. It'll water out much faster than the granular soil, but it is quick. So on a beautiful 78-degree weather day, today is a phenomenal day to do a liquid application because it's doing some active growing today. That early fertilization just in the early planting does phenomenal for the size of your bulbs. Getting to take advantage of these late early growing days is just phenomenal. They can do a lot of growing in the first couple month or so.
So you see, we used to do it twice, spacing every month we do.
So now until the weather changes and we're full-blown winter, I would do it just about every month. Full-blown winter hits, you're done until like February, and then you can resume feeding again. I'll go over that a little bit more. So here's some information on planting onions. Seedlings, we're going to start with, it's not the season for the seedlings, but when you're doing seedlings, you're going to always follow the planting instruction on the package. Onions generally don't like to be transplanted. I'd recommend direct seeding for best results. However, they will tolerate it. Don't let this deter you. If this is your option, go with it. They don't like to be disrupted too much, so just thin as you go versus trying to parse out one single bulb. Thin as you eat them. You can eat them green. You eat the whole time they're growing, just thin them. Once they start getting into each other's growing space, they can sense each other, and then they're gonna put the brakes on, kind of like a goldfish in a small aquarium, you know, senses it doesn't have any more room to grow, and then you throw that goldfish into a giant pond and it becomes a giant koi-sized fish. So garlic is and onions are very similar in that way. In the springtime, you'll see a lot of these bunches and tray packs of onions. It's a good time to take advantage of those. They've done a lot of the hard work for you in overwintering them, and you can just get started in spring, ready to go. Finish them up. So plant them 4 to 6 inches apart. Plant when the soil is dry, because again, rotting is your biggest issue with these guys. Sometimes they look a little dry, these bunches in the bottom right, they look a little dry when you buy them, and people want to soak them to kind of plumpen them up. Don't do that. They'll rot. Just get them in the ground. They'll figure out watering from there. Again, thin out versus separating, always thin out. Especially these little tray packs in the top right. If you try to break those apart, you're going to cause more issues for the plant than you would if you just thinned them out. Much more instant satisfaction when you go with this way versus waiting all winter long to get you see some growth on your bulbs and sets. However, it's very satisfying to start from bulbs and sets. So plant 3 inches deep, 3 inches apart. Make sure to fertilize well as planting as consistently through that active growing season. Thin the bulbs needed to encourage bigger bulbs. I recommend going for the sadder looking ones and leave the big ones.
So, okay, so you can plant in fall, or you can plant in spring, as you were just saying.
Mhm.
So in spring, excuse me. In spring, what's best to plant in fall and what's best to plant in spring in terms of seeds, starts, bulbs?
Yeah, so seedlings, great to start in August. Those bunches and tray packs, great to start in spring. And the bulbs and sets, great for starting in October.
Okay.
Which does better? Or they're both about the same?
A lot of people really like doing the bunches. I'd say we get a huge amount of people coming in for the bunches, but also I think a large portion of those people like to do the sets, they just didn't get it in. So it's kind of just like a personal preference. Are you willing to fertilize and water and look at them all winter long? Would you rather just to put a cover crop in and think about it in the spring?
So the end result is the same.
Just about.
in spring and fall.
Yeah, especially I'd say the tray packs perform a little less well, but the bunches and the bulbs do very well. So now I'm gonna go a little bit more into these winter care. They're basically go dormant until the temperatures return back to normal. It's important to learn about these intricacies for what winter means for your onions and garlic, and just to keep an eye, know what to keep an eye out for as they're growing. So timing in the Willamette Valley is very important. September through October is ideal for planting. We still have these beautiful days. Our soil is still warm. They're going to be doing a lot of growing in the next month that you might not realize that you're going to get ahead if you get them in now. You want to ensure that you get a good amount of that active growth time happening before the winter nights really set in, and just kind of put them to bed. As winter crops, they really need very little care to thrive. It's all about fertilizing and when to fertilize on these guys if you want really big garlics and really big onions. Again, the growth slows significantly when the temperatures go below 55. Things start going to bed for winter. And then when the soil starts going below 55 and starts going towards freezing is when things really start to go to sleep. They're not doing a lot of active growing. They're not going to be picking up that liquid fertilizer as you pour it in. It's just going to wash through with the rain. that's when the granular fertilizer is really important because it's just there for it when it needs it, when it wakes up for a little bit of sleepy time on a nice day or something. More about fertilizing because it's so important. Garlic, shallots, and onions can all be fed in very similar ways, and there is that difference between liquid and granular. I recommend using both. Granular is your slow released, it's very consistent, works consistently every day, all day for 3 months. However, that liquid is very fast, quickly absorbed, and better for those colder temperatures, easier for it to uptake in colder temperatures. Again, put that organic granular fertilizer in the hole at planting. These guys can't reach out very far for their nutrients. Then you're gonna want a liquid feed. You're gonna want a liquid feed before the temperatures drop so you can try to squeeze as many as you can. Stop fertilizing come mid-November. That's kind of the general rule of thumb when it's really starting to get cold around here. Through the beginning of February, so February comes, it kind of starts to feel like a false spring around here when it starts to warm up a little bit and we start moving around a little more as people even. And you can kind of feel the rhythms return. It feels like spring. However, then we're gonna get that, that giant freeze that comes and kills all our trees out of nowhere. And reminds us it's not yet spring. But around that February time, you can start resuming your liquid feeding again, just about every 2 weeks. Don't beat yourself up if you don't get all those feedings in. They're gonna grow regardless. I can preach all day about the right things to do, but in my own bed at home, I'm not the perfect gardener myself, and I didn't do a lot of fertilizing this year. Came up with tiny little bulbs for my garlic, but that's just as satisfying to me in the end. I eat them just the same. It's a little more satisfying to have a huge bowl, I'll be honest, but bulb. So other winter maintenance to keep an eye on. Again, growth will be slow. However, you should be controlling the weeds within 8 inches of your plants. Again, we do not want them competing with each other or with weeds. So this is including space from your winter cover crops as well. Just consider your cover crops as a weed when they're within that space of your bulb, just because they're going to start to stress out your bulb. You can thin your green garlic and your onions from the larger one and eat them as you go. Make sure to maintain that 2-inch mulch of compost. As the rain comes, it'll wash it away. But you want it to still be there. It maintains the moistness, reduces the weeds, and helps maintain temperatures as they fluctuate. Flowerscapes do you have a question?
2 inches of mulch compost reduces weeds. I don't understand that. What kind of mulch you're putting nutritious mulch compost in and it's gonna keep the weeds down on top layer?
Yeah, ideally you're gonna be weeding out from those areas and then adding an extra 2 inches helps block the sunlight from weed seeds to germinate.
That'd be 5-inch deep then?
Sorry, what?
That'd be 5 inches deep, you could plant in your garlic 3 inches down and put 2 inches in on top.
3 inches I'd say is a little heavy. I said 2 to 3 inches. 3 inches a little heavy. You put 2 inches, then it's probably about 4 inches, and then as they grow, they kind of push it away too, and that's when you want to make sure to maintain. Flowerscapes are an important thing to note on both garlic and onions. Garlic can be left. It's not going to harm your garlic at all. You can eat it even. Onionscapes, however, are detrimental to the health of the onion. So they come out of the bulb of the onion and kind of just mess with the skin and can create an open for disease and bacteria in there. So flowerscapes, just cut them off, get rid of them. Leave the onion in there though. Water as you need it, as needed. Moist, not saturated. Know your soil. Stick your finger in there. Get a little dirty. Dig a hole if you have to. Feel it out. you'll know what oversaturation is, you know. Make a mud pie, think about it. So what to watch out for as you're planting onions, watch out for things like the molds, the discolorations, rust growing on your leaves. It'll be like a brown dirt. It looks like brown reddish dirt growing on the leaves. Aphids, less of an issue in the winter time. The biggest deal with all of these is prevention is key. Once you've seen these molds and whatnot on your bulbs, it's pretty much done for. So you see these, pull them out and get them into the compost heap or the trash even, so you don't perpetuate it in the compost. And so that way it doesn't spread or transfer to your other ones as you're working around. Prevention is key. Prevention, you'll find prevention in adequate spacing, no oversaturated feed, including things like crop rotation. Because if you're planting your onions and your garlic in that same spot year after year, the pests know where to find garlic every year. The disease knows where to find garlic every year. So you want to keep the pest and disease kind of like on their toes.
So we have this garlic patch under our cherry tree. It was there and we moved there over 30 years ago. And it just keeps producing and producing. And we can dig them out, but they keep coming back. So we can't rotate, but the garlic is great. It's healthy. It just keeps coming. Which kind of flies in the face of what you're saying with crop rotation. So what's going on?
They might look good now, but here a few years down the line, you might see a detrimental.
No, we're
Situation
talking,
happening.
they've been there 30 years
What
doing
kind of
that.
garlic?
You know. Maybe it's actually a leak. I said elephant garlic originally, but they don't have cloves around. They have one bulbous. One bulb, you know, and they get pretty big, 3 inches. Around, so what is that?
I have no idea. They're clearly happy there. You've got a great environment for them to thrive.
Yeah.
They've kind of naturalized there in a way.
And they do, and by the way, when we had a big vole infestation about 3 summers ago. We found out, well, they did damage, but we found out that if you plant, like, the voles really got into the trees, the saplings. And ate the bark around the bases. Garlic and daffodils are good for keeping the voles away from your trees, we found out, and that works.
Yep,
So,
those organosulfur compounds.
Yeah.
Spicy to eat in animals.
yeah,
Yeah, I'm not sure about the naturalization of things. You can talk to Darren more about that. I'm referring mostly to like cultivated areas where you're just, you got your little garden space, you plant year after year, or your raised beds or your potting pots. So I'm not sure. But in generally, crop rotation is great because, switching out different families share different pests, different diseases. So you just keep things on their toes. Use different things out of the soil, creating that really healthy soil environment. Harvesting our onions and garlic. So here at the fun part. In a blink of an eye, winter is gone and spring is upon us again. So let's talk about the spring signs of maturity, appropriate harvesting methods, post-harvest storage, and how to ensure a successful crop around these times. So in general, the leaves of your garlic and onions will kind of start to yellow. They'll yellow at the tips over the winter, but they'll really start to yellow. And that is a good indicator to stop watering. Stopping watering will help increase their storage life and will help increase that spicy flavor. And reduce the amount of water in the bulb, which will reduce the amount of bacteria. Around mid-June to July is harvest time. This year was a late year on them. I heard a lot of people pushing it off into July. Onions will do you the great favor of just flopping over when they're ready to be pulled. They let you know and they're very clear about it. The garlic just kind of does the yellowing leaves and was like, oh, maybe I'm ready. Well, if you're when in doubt, second week of June is about the beginning of the time. You can push it to the middle of July. How anxious are you to get the rest of your crop in the garden? You have a question?
Yeah, so, do you stop watering the onions when they turn yellow?
Yeah,
Is it both of those?
both of them. Yep. A lot. Peppers kind of want this too, you know, before you pick peppers, they want to be kind of starved of water for a few days beforehand, and it helps increase the spiciness and the flavor of the peppers. Pull on a cool part of the day and be gentle. You don't want to be snapping off your bulbs in the ground. It's nothing more frustrating. So storage facts, gently rub the bulk excess dirt about it. Just leave some dirt on there. It's healthy for the plant. Don't worry about it. Store it in a cool, dry room for 2 to 3 weeks. Then you can clip the roots. So I recommend keeping the roots on there a little bit. Just helps increase that storage life. You can braid them in that time after you've clipped the roots and after you've let them set for a few weeks to dry out. But I would recommend not removing the total amount of the dirt until you're ready to eat. Just kind of leave some of it on there. It's good for it. So out of everything we learned today, I hope that you guys walk away with knowing that it's just takes some patience and some intention in the garden to grow good garlic. So while it is a relatively low care garden vegetable, onion and garlics require just some thought behind it to make it a successful yield. They are a long-term crop in your garden, which means it takes a little bit long-term thinking. You want to be thinking about how can you hit the ground running when you pull that garlic out to really take advantage of that summer planting. You got to be thinking about, you know, how do I maximize for next year? Do I need to put in a cover crop to increase the nitrogen in my soil? Things like legumes, peas and beans, they actually fix nitrogen into a usable compound in the soil for things like garlic and whatnot. So maybe that's your crop rotation. If you struggled with feeding this year and you notice things were really small, maybe you plant peas and beans in that spot for the summer and try again in the winter. So just think prevention and make intentional decisions in the garden, and I think you will see success. It just takes a little bit. Oh, and that's the end of my presentation. I really hope you guys enjoyed it. You have a question?
Back to like soil drainage, I've seen some people working in sand. Good idea, bad idea?
Sand, just straight sand, adding that into your soils, I am not a fan. Between the sand and the clay, you can create concrete. It's just about, so organic matter is where it's at.
Regarding sand, I've gotten river sand, which just seems to perk things up. I mean, you know, if that's been washing down from the Cascades and all along, you know, from the rock. Anyway, I highly recommend river sand. And I know what you're saying about the concrete thing with the clay soil, but if you have enough organic matter, it's just like.
It's all about that
adding a
organic
spice
material.
to it. It's almost like salt and pepper, you know, and because there's a lot of trace minerals in that soil from the basalt and anyway, I don't know, what do you think?
I think that there is not a whole lot of nutrient content to sand. It's and like you said, it might be a great spice seasoning to your thing. However, organic material is really the meat and potatoes.
Even for trace minerals.
Uh, trace minerals, I don't know about trace minerals in sand. I can say that for a fact. I'm not entirely sure about that. I do believe that the majority of the sand that you're going to get, I don't want to talk bad on the Bark place or whatnot, but like from bulk places like that isn't gonna generally be just like the nicest stuff. We can talk more about it. We can ask Darren questions. Darren is the knows all be all around here, so.
The question on like the compost mulch type stuff, like, I guess kind of what texture are we going for that? Cause like, I've used straw and it was terrible, it grew a bunch of grass. I usually use just like maple leaves that I mow up and then dump. That's pretty coarse, it doesn't really break down. And then I know there's things like, bad compost or like, I'm really tempted to use mint compost just cause it smells so good.
Yeah.
Like, I guess, what kind of compost texture are we going for?
So. It all will work to do what you want. I'm a fan of the organic compost just because you can work those into the soil and it'll just add nothing but the nutrients in there. The hay stuff, it's just kind of to block the sunlight out. So that's kind of the biggest deal with the compost, in addition to the organic material, is blocking out that sunlight. So it can be a personal preference. I've never used mint compost, but I would.
Someone in my neighborhood got it, smells so good.
It's so amazing.
I'm just tempted to use it just to smell it.
Some people, they have cows and chickens and horses, and they'll do the aged manure piles. You can use manure, aged manure. If it's aged, it's not going to burn your plants from being too hot. You're just looking for something thick enough to do the job, and I'm a fan of the organic stuff just because it's going to do nothing but add to your soil in the future. The perfect soil has a little bit of loam, a little bit of clay, and a little bit of sand in it. Do you have a question? Rabbit manure. I think rabbit manure tends to be quite hot, so it would have to probably compost down quite a bit. Yeah, but I'm less versed in that, less confident in that.
So it takes about 6 months to age.
Yeah.
Okay.
All the compost we sell here in bags is going to be aged and ready to go. Yeah, some of it's a little more high quality.
I heard horse manure has to be aged for a year or more.
Horse manure is one of the hotter ones. I think the chicken manure we age it in our bag, it's aged out at 6 to 8 months. So I would bet horse would be much more than that.
And if you can get llama manure, I've been told that doesn't need to be aged.
What was that?
Llama manure.
Oh.
And I got a question here. How deep would a raised bed need to be in order for garlic to grow? So I like to reference this to like container growing because I do a lot of container growing in pots. And generally the rule of thumb is like 8 inches. And you can grow a lot of things in 8 inches. Those onions and garlic have very narrow or very little root space. So you could even get as narrow as probably 4 inches. But then they're gonna be very hungry because they got nothing to scavenge around. But in a raised bed, you're definitely safe if you have at least 6 inches of raised bed. Specific granulators or fertilizer, I recommend GB organic vegetable fertilizer works best. GB organic fertilizer is really great. I'm trying to remember what the number percentage is on there. So on fertilizer, the 3 little numbers you see at the bottom of the bag stand for nitrogen, NPK potassium, and then K is
Phosphate.
phosphate, and then potassium, thank you. Potassium's the K. And you're looking for a high first number for nitrogen when you're planting these things. You'll see that in bone meal and whatnot. That first number, nitrogen, is really good for green growth of things. The second number is really great for flowering growth and things, and that third number is really great just for general health. So anything within this with a higher nitrogen number would generally be great.
So if you don't have something with high nitrogen, do you recommend using bone meal when you plant?
Bone meal is great. Bone meal has that high nitrogen number. I believe it's like a 10-1-1 on a bone meal. Any more questions?
Is there anything that garlic doesn't want to be planted next to?
That's a good question. Sometimes different things do give off different compounds into the soil. I'm thinking like broccolis, the brassicasées tend to have pretty high fumigative qualities in the soil. So if I had to guess, I would say the brassicasées would, out of anyone, might make them a little angry or even give it a weird taste. But anything within that like 6 to 8 inch around it will inhibit the growth just from competition space.
That's why it's good to grow it, just put it in fall, because the rest of your garden. If you're not growing anything else during the winter.
Exactly, and you can put a cover crop in next to them to help. Cover crops are great for preventing weed seeds to come take over. Again, they're shading out the soil area, blocking them from being able to germinate, as well as taking like water out of the soil, preventing the seeds from being able to get that water.
What's an example of cover crop?
I have a whole bunch of them in there. Daikon radish is a really great one. We have a couple legumes in there. I'm a huge fan of legumes. So depending on what your goals are in your garden would depend on what you pick for your cover crop. So if you struggle really badly with compaction, your soil is just hard clay and it's just concrete, you can use things with a much bigger taproot, like daikon radish or cereals. And they will tap right into that soil. They'll break up that compaction. Come spring, you can just mow, real tight mow, and let everything decompose in the soil to add all that nutrients back in the soil, especially with the legumes and their nitrogen fixing qualities. And so that'll just decompose in the soil and create a better soil structure in there as well.
You said cereal, do you mean oats?
Mhm, yeah.
Oh, okay.
We have a really great bulk cover crop section over there, and it kind of breaks down what kind of goals you might want and to help you pick them out. And we're happy to help you make some decisions too. But I like to say choose your cover crops based on your goals in the garden. Are things hungry? Plant legumes. Are you just having a hard time working in the soil? You want it to break up? You can use the daikon radish in the cereals. All right.